So, just a straightforward update before we get into this point. This channel no longer earns a revenue, and the dog rescue effort that used to receive support from that revenue now depends on viewer support directly. If you want to contribute, the PayPal and Amazon links in the description both go toward that work. Now let's talk about a pipe, a $2 section of PVC pipe that, buried correctly in a garden bed, produces free fertilizer every day from material you're currently throwing away, completely automatically, without any processing, transportation, or management on your part beyond the initial installation. The composting efficiency problems we've discussed in other contexts converge in a single practical solution here. The fermentation tube, also called a leaky pipe fertilizer system or in situ fermentation column, is a buried perforated pipe that accepts raw kitchen scraps, garden waste and organic material directly from your kitchen counter, distributes the liquid nutrient output of their decomposition directly into the root zone of surrounding plants, and does this continuously every day without requiring you to manage a pile, turn anything, wait for maturity, or transport finished product from a composting area to the garden. The raw material goes in the top. The fertility comes out the bottom and sides into the surrounding root zone. The system runs itself. So, this is not a new invention. Buried clay pot irrigation systems using the same distribution principle have actually been documented in Chinese and Near Eastern agriculture for over 4,000 years. And, the specific application to continuous fertility delivery from decomposing organic material really follows directly from that same principle. The modern version, using perforated PVC pipe, is basically a $2 adaptation of ancient infrastructure that, the industrial fertilizer system has made sure most gardeners never hear about. Because honestly, a system that produces free continuous fertility from kitchen waste just doesn't fit with the repeat purchase model that the $200 annual fertilizer budget represents. The construction and installation of the fermentation tube system is simple enough to complete in an afternoon, and it requires no tools beyond a drill, a saw, and a trowel. A standard 4-inch diameter PVC pipe section, cut to somewhere between 16 and 24 inches in length, provides the basic structure. The length really determines the depth of the fertility distribution zone in the surrounding soil, with longer pipes delivering nutrient leachate to deeper root zones, and shorter pipes concentrating the delivery in the upper soil horizon, where most annual vegetable feeder roots are active. Drilling 1/4-inch holes in rows along the lower 12 to 15 inches of the pipe at 2-inch spacing creates the perforations through which the liquid decomposition products distribute into the surrounding soil as they accumulate in the tube. The upper 2 to 3 inches of the pipe remains above soil surface to serve as the input point for organic material additions, and a simple cap or inverted plant saucer covers the opening between additions to exclude rain that would dilute the fermentation liquid and pests that would otherwise be attracted to the decomposing material. The pipe is buried vertically with the perforated section fully below soil level and the unperforated upper section at or slightly above grade, in a location that is central to the plants it is intended to serve. For a 4x8 raised bed, 2 tubes positioned symmetrically within the bed serve the full planting area effectively, with the lateral distribution of the leachate through soil capillary action reaching the outer bed margins within days of each addition. The installation hole should be roughly the diameter of the pipe, dug with a post hole digger or a long trowel in garden bed soil, backfilled around the pipe with the excavated soil once the pipe is in position. No concrete, no compaction, no specialized installation procedure. The pipe simply sits in the soil in close contact with the surrounding growing medium, which is the contact that allows the liquid leachate to distribute outward by capillary action and gravity as it accumulates inside the pipe. The fermentation process that occurs inside the buried tube is not conventional aerobic composting, and understanding the specific biology of what happens inside the tube explains why it produces plant-available fertility faster than any pile composting system can match. The organic material added to the buried tube is in a warm, moist, anaerobic environment because the sealed soil contact around the tube and the organic material filling it rapidly consumes available oxygen and creates the oxygen-depleted conditions that anaerobic fermentation requires. This is not the same anaerobic condition that produces the sour, ammonia-producing, worm-repelling outcome when buried rice or compost is over-applied, because the fermentation tube is a contained system with controlled inputs rather than a distributed soil amendment that affects the surrounding soil chemistry directly. Inside the tube, anaerobic fermentation by lactic acid bacteria, the same organisms responsible for lacto-fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi, processes the organic material into fermentation products that include organic acids, amino acids, enzymes, and a range of bioactive compounds that, research on fermented plant juice and Korean natural farming inputs has documented as beneficial to plant root zone biology. The liquid that leaches through the perforations is not raw decomposition leachate in the potentially harmful sense of unprocessed waste. Instead, it's a fermented, partially acidified, biologically active liquid that the soil community around the pipe processes efficiently into plant-available nutrients, all without the aerobic processing step that conventional compost requires. The fertility delivery rate of the fermentation tube system is continuous rather than periodic, which is, honestly, the property that distinguishes it most sharply from conventional fertilizer application and conventional compost application. Plants receive nutrients at the steady low concentration rate that biological soil systems naturally maintain, rather than the high concentration pulse that fertilizer application produces, followed by the weeks-long depletion period before the next application. Research on nutrient delivery mode in plant growth consistently shows that steady low concentration availability produces better long-term plant performance than periodic high concentration pulses, because plant physiology evolved for the former rather than the latter. The specific organic materials that produce the most effective fermentation tube fertility output follow from understanding what the fermentation biology inside the tube needs to produce the most plant-beneficial leachate. Kitchen fruit and vegetable scraps are the highest value input for the fermentation tube system, providing the sugars, organic acids, enzymes, and microbial diversity that drive vigorous fermentation activity and produce the richest leachate output. Avoid meat, dairy, cooked foods with oil or salt, and citrus in large quantities, not because these materials don't ferment, but because meat and dairy attract the pest activity that the tube cap excludes only imperfectly, and high salt content from processed food scraps can accumulate in the immediate tube zone at concentrations that inhibit the soil biology the system depends on. Coffee grounds added to the tube once or twice weekly provide the nitrogen boost that fruit and vegetable scraps alone may not deliver in adequate concentration during periods of rapid plant growth when nitrogen demand is highest. The fermentation biology processes coffee grounds efficiently, and the nitrogen they contain enters the fermentation liquid in forms that are more immediately plant-available than the slow microbial mineralization that coffee grounds require when applied directly to soil. Garden green material, specifically fresh grass clippings, soft plant trimmings and legume foliage, provides the nitrogen-rich input that balances the higher carbon content of vegetable scraps and maintains the fermentation activity at the rate that produces continuous leachate output rather than the slow, low-output fermentation of a high-carbon-only input stream. Cutting green material into pieces short enough to fit easily into the tube opening reduces the compaction that long fibrous material creates inside the tube, maintaining the porosity that allows the fermentation liquid to accumulate and distribute through the perforations rather than being blocked by a solid plug of compressed fiber. Scaling the fermentation tube system across a full productive garden changes the economics of soil fertility management fundamentally, and the comparison with conventional fertilizer expenditure makes the investment case for the installation time compelling. A standard 4x8 raised bed with 2 fermentation tubes installed centrally receives continuous fertility input from whatever kitchen and garden waste a typical household produces over the growing season. The average American household generates approximately 1 to 2 pounds of fruit and vegetable waste daily, which is more than adequate to keep 2 fermentation tubes in continuous active fermentation through a full growing season. The fertility value of that waste, expressed as the equivalent fertilizer input it would take to replace the nutrient content, is estimated at anywhere from $30 to $100 per season per garden bed, depending on the specific nutrient analysis of the inputs and the length of the growing season. The tubes themselves cost under $2 at any hardware store or home improvement center. The installation time is under 30 minutes per tube. The ongoing maintenance is limited to adding material to the top of the tube when it has room for more, which happens naturally as you generate kitchen waste, rather than requiring a separate management routine. The cap requires checking after heavy rain to ensure it hasn't been displaced. Beyond those minimal interactions, the system runs on the waste stream your household already produces, converting material you're currently sending to landfill into the fertility your garden beds need every day without any additional effort from you. This is the infrastructure model of garden fertility, which is categorically different from the input model. An input requires repeat purchase. Infrastructure requires installation and then works. The fermentation tube, once installed, is infrastructure. The fertilizer bag is an input. Both produce plant fertility. Only one of them does it for free after the initial $2 investment, and that is the option that the agricultural supply industry has spent several decades making sure most gardeners never build. Subscribe to Hydrohaven for the growing knowledge that builds infrastructure rather than input dependency. See you in the next one.